Are there any questions? First of all, I want to do meditation on what we talked about just now, but before we do that, any questions, you're welcome to ask. Yes, please?
Could you explain the suffering of suffering once more? And is it similar to the Buddha's two-arrow story? Sorry.
All right, so to say again, yes, no?
Could you explain suffering of suffering once more?
Okay.
And is this similar to that Buddha's two-arrow story, that the first arrow is what happens to us, and the second arrow is how we react to the situation, which adds on to the suffering?
Okay, the first question understood, but what about the arrow? Which arrow are you talking about? Arrow? E-R-R?
Arrow.
Arrow? Okay, so the story of someone being hit by an arrow and asking where's the arrow made of and so forth?
Yeah, that one.
So what about that story?
Are they linked, suffering of suffering and this?
Okay. I see, okay, I understand the question. So basically, what is the suffering of suffering and what is the story of the arrow? How do these two relate? Okay. So first, the suffering of suffering is just what we identify as suffering. What we as humans, ordinary humans, would say, it sucks. I don't want it. Of course, that's individually different, obviously. The person who loves chili, it's going to be pleasant, the experience in the mouth. For a person who hates it, it's going to be suffering. Yeah. So in the end, of course, it's something very subjective to decide this is suffering or not. A person who hates to be touched, a massage would be torture, and for someone else it would be, pleasant. But the point is, suffering of suffering is an unpleasant, what we would identify as like if I identify something as being, sorry, I was a little faster than intended. So suffering of suffering means basically what we individually would identify to be a type of problem. Something unwanted, something unpleasant, whatever that means. Yeah? That's suffering of suffering. Oh, I'm glad that the first one is not understood. The other ones are so much harder to understand. So yeah, suffering of suffering is just good old suffering. Yeah, so you have it twice. Suffering even from the perspective of an arhat, yes, but also from our perspective. Then suffering of change, as I said earlier, from the perspective of an arhat and so forth, is in the nature of suffering. And for us, we call it happiness, but because of its changeable nature for so many different reasons, well, first of all, the intensity is not the same. That's not part of the name. But then change, of course, shows it doesn't last. It's not reliable for whatever reason. Okay. And then the all-pervasive just means having this mind and body. All right, great. And the story with the arrow. Are you all familiar with the story of the arrow? No, I'll tell you the story. Imagine someone gets shot, by an arrow, like gets shot, and the arrow stuck in their chest, and all they have to do is pull it out. So it's not as deep as, it sounds terrible, don't pull it out, but it's not deep enough for it to kill you if you were to pull it out. So it's that kind of arrow. And then the person with the arrow stuck in the chest goes, well, what is that arrow made of? Why was it shot at me? Is this wood expensive or not? Where did they paint it or not? I mean, that would be ludicrous. Pull it out. Who cares where it comes from? And so forth. So this story is about asking certain questions like, why do we suffer? Where does it come from? Why is it like that? Like, why do we have misconceptions? Why do we, who created it? Was there, there's certain questions that just cannot be answered. Like, why are things impermanent? Or of course, there's an important question, where does our suffering come from? The question, the root misconception, those are very important questions because they're about removing the error. But then to ask, why do we have it in the first, why do we have that misconception in the first place? Where does it come from? That is we don't know, and it's not important. What we need to know is the root cause of all our problems. Can it be removed or not? And once we find out it can be, to make an effort, and the rest is not important. So I think the story of the arrow is much more about asking the right kind of questions that help us to remove the arrow. Where the arrow came from and so forth, that's not important. Yeah. So you see, in other religions, especially if you were raised in the Abrahamic kind of religions, so Islam, well, I should start chronologically, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, those three. Who's been raised in any of these traditions? Okay, all right. So in there, we have a beginning. We have a beginning. It all has a beginning. What about those who are not raised in these traditions? Do you have a beginning when the whole world came into existence? No, there isn't. Oh, then you have an advantage. Because in Christianity, we're so used to, everything was wonderful. We were basically in a kind of a liberated state, and then someone ate the wrong apple. I'm not making fun of it, but eating the wrong apple, and the whole trouble starts. That's kind of like how it's usually told. So there's a sense, okay, there's a beginning. We have a mind that needs a beginning. We have a mind, you see, like our misconception, this root misconception, that fundamental misconception, tries to solidify things in a way in which they cannot be solidified, make them more concrete than they are. Therefore, beginningless is very unsettling for our mind. Has existed since beginningless time. That seems to be so overwhelming that I believe in some religions, religions came to existence on the basis of great beings, possibly enlightened beings, who did this for benefiting people, so that they lived a life that was beneficial in the sense that people didn't harm themselves and others. And they've been pretty successful in general in accomplishing that. But sometimes it was too unsettling to hear there's no beginning. But even in Christianity, you have a problem, or in Islam or in Judaism, basically believing in the same God, you have the same problem. Because who created God? When was the beginning of God, right? Beginninglessness, you always end up with beginninglessness. So even though there's a beginning to us to a certain degree as humans, although it's actually really the tribe of Israel, to be honest, the story of paradise and everything, and Adam and Eve. Honestly, impossible that humanity came from Adam and Eve. Then everyone would be related. It's like then if it was just Adam and Eve and no one else, right? That's the story in the Bible that is also accepted, I think, by in the Islam. So it was Adam and Eve, and they were basically asked to leave paradise, and then all the trouble started. So samsara basically started, and then they had children. And so what? They all intermarried or what, these children, if there was no one else? And the story goes, no, there were other tribes. Oh, there were others as well. That's how some scholars would explain that. So therefore, it's a little different than it seems. But there's still a sense, okay, there's a beginning. But what was before God? Was there a time when there was no God? No, God goes back endlessly, can't posit a beginning. So sooner or later, you have to face that, beginningless time. Sorry, that wasn't your question. I went a little further from there. Yes. So anyway, so these are some unsettling questions for us, difficult to understand at this point. But yeah, having existed since beginningless time. All our root conception, root misconception, our fundamental misconception has always existed. Yeah. Anyway, more questions? Yes?
We talked about that even the objective reality exists in our mind, and one has to just keep questioning because we live in a world of contradictions, right? So I was just thinking, and this question has been in my mind, like we recognize Dalai Lama, His Holiness, and then there are other recognized lamas as well. How are we so sure that that is also not because of what we have heard about them. So it brought a, thinking, and then when we meet, so an expectation builds up, and then we feel certain emotions because that's what our thought is, right? So how are we so sure about everything, and like even, for example, even the fact liberation exists, how are we so sure about every single thing?
We shouldn't be sure that there is liberation and that these lamas are incredible. We should question. Like I said in the beginning, I mean, I'm telling you from my perspective because I'm sure, but I wasn't sure in the beginning. So again, whatever I say, be skeptical, question it, maybe, maybe not, right? Yeah, so maybe I could put it in a different way. I mean, I'm just telling you from my own experience, but I could be lying. So in the end, of course, anecdotal kind of evidence is not real evidence, but it can still help us to think, oh, maybe. At least, like having that doubt that allows for that. That's already a good kind of doubt, like thinking, oh, maybe there is. So to be open to the possibility, but not to allow for it to influence you. So the way to check, of course, there's a way to check. No, well, first of all, like to be skeptical. I don't know, maybe they're just ordinary people. And I think most people in the very beginning see them as pretty ordinary. Even they hear these great stories, but they're not into these ideas strong enough to really make a huge difference. So they're probably going to see His Holiness as just ordinary. And that's how His Holiness wants to appear. That's how His Holiness does appear. When he talks sometimes, like saying, I'm just an ordinary person, etc. And we should start from there. Because otherwise, just believing in it because someone told us, that's no way that's going to be helpful. But to be open, and to have an open heart, to not have, to be, so the opposite, so the two extremes here. We're very good with extremes, as you probably know. The extreme would be right from the beginning, just because someone told me to believe His Holiness is amazing. That's one extreme. The opposite extreme would be to think, he's just ordinary, he's just this guy pretending to be special. And to hold that view without the possibility to possibly change it by given that His Holiness, affects our mind in a certain way. So it's really important to have an openness, but not to have fallen to either extreme. And then just, watch. Be around as in for instance, maybe read about His Holiness, books about him that describe what he's done. I mean, that's really hard to say they're lies, right? I tell you a few stories about His Holiness that either I witnessed myself or I heard from people who are really reliable. So even though they didn't happen to us, it's very likely that they did happen, and then you go, ooh, that is weird. But even more convincing is listening to their teachings, even though you're not in their presence, listening to their teachings, reading their books, and check, does His Holiness affect you in a particular way? I mean, because there also needs to be a connection. Whatever there is, because of interdependence, you always need two. You can have an incredible Lama, but if from the side of the student there's not that connection, then, and that's not negative, it's just not there, then nothing will happen. There needs to be that connection. So there needs to be something from both sides. And you don't need to worry if it's not there, it may be there with someone else. You never know. So it's not like there's only one solution. I'm just presenting His Holiness as an example, but representative for anyone else who has these special qualities. And in the beginning, don't be convinced by anything. Just listen, have an open mind, but be skeptical. You don't need to believe anything. No, you shouldn't. Only when it makes sense. That's why we learn about the Dharma. We hear about faith, for instance. Like faith, what is faith? There are different types of faith, but what we're talking about here is kind of believing faith, believing in something to be true. That kind of belief, it takes time. And it should be temporary, by the way. The kind of belief that we're talking about here, believing in the Four Noble Truth, believing in reincarnation, believing in this, that, and the other, It has two main characteristics. It's temporary, should be temporary, and it should be based on reasoning. The first one, the second one, so based on reasoning, that's when we start off with. When we hear this, it has to make sense to us. If it doesn't, you don't need to take on, right? But if you take it on, then because it makes sense. For instance, we talked about these three forms of suffering. Is it true or not? Does it make sense or not? Right? Does it make sense that our experiences... So we move slowly towards, yeah, maybe, okay. Right? You don't have to believe it right away, but at least, yeah, maybe, probably yes, okay. And so already based on that, our actions change. The way we look at things, they start to change. Therefore, you start off with that, always with reasoning. Don't believe it out of blind faith. It's not helpful at all. And the second quality, it should be temporary. You believe it only until you come to know it. Yeah? You aim towards knowing it until our mind has the capacity to know anything. To know from your own experience, from your own mind, that your own mind knows that there's the three types of suffering. It becomes, you know it. So there's a progressive, like the progression. First there's like, no it doesn't, that's bullshit. Secondly, oh, maybe there is, maybe there isn't, probably there isn't. And then you go, oh, maybe there is, maybe there isn't. So like an equal doubt, like, oh, maybe it is, maybe there isn't. So you don't prefer one or the other. And then you move towards maybe there is, maybe there isn't, probably there is, but who knows. And then there's conviction. And then understanding. That's usually the progression. So assuming that this is all correct, this is in accordance with reality, therefore our faith, our belief here, which is conviction basically, or maybe less than conviction, depends on the strength of belief, but the point is it needs to be based on reasoning and it needs to be temporary. The goal is to come up to aim towards a first-hand understanding. Does that make sense?
A little bit, it does make sense that...
So I'm saying you don't need to believe anything. So see if it makes sense, then belief will arise naturally. So you're at the stage of analysis, and maybe you walk away saying, no, doesn't make sense. No, fine. That's also okay. Yeah. The problem in this particular religious system, I wouldn't even call it a religion, is that unless we believe it, we're not going to do it, right? So some belief is there, and then if there is some belief, then we will do the practices. So a certain degree must be there, because otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here. But just don't force it, just allow for it to naturally grow. There's no, I don't know how else to put it. Just allow for it to organically grow. And take the bits you find helpful and leave the rest for now. But be open-minded. Be open to these ideas. But it seems your question is not yet answered, so go ahead and ask again.
I was, I'm able to grasp a bit of it, but
which part you don't understand yet? Which bit?
How would I know it's right? How would I know that this feels right? Because there would always be a question, what if what I feel is right is also wrong? That question still arises.
Oh, so even if you believe something, how do I still know it's true or not?
Yeah.
Well, you'd use your mind. Give me an example. Give me an example. So that his Holiness the Dalai Lama is special? Well, that takes time. It's like you need to hear more about him. So let's leave that for now, because you haven't met His Holiness. So this is difficult. I mean, unless we get to know someone better, we really can't say. But what about your other questions?
Okay, so if
other
we were
points.
to just take a behavior, let's say, if someone has this need for validation, right, and then they talk to people, right, so, but they have learned that they had this need for validation, so now every time they engage in such behavior, they might think, what if this is, just a need for validation and not something I'm doing out of my own. So the behavior, still you're questioning it. What if it arises because of some other cause?
Okay, when you say a certain type of behavior that you still don't know it's the right kind of action, basically.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, would that be a behavior that benefits others or it harms others? Oh, thank you. Just some hot water. Thank you. It benefits others or it harms others?
But most of the time it comes on to oneself, right? Like that self, as you mentioned, self becomes very essential, right? So for us, would it be harmful or would it be beneficial?
Well, you're only in the beginning. I mean, we just started, so we haven't even talked about. Let's see whether you have that question after 9 days, right? Okay, so just be open and skeptical. In the end, yeah, when you say it this way, when you address especially the self, we haven't heard enough yet. That question can't be answered yet. Or I'm pretty sure you'll find an answer, but let's see. If not, come again.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Is there a question over there? Yeah.
So, there is a lot of...
Can you speak up a little? Because I can still not hear it, though it goes into the, yeah.
Okay. So I feel that you asked to observe our mind. So I observed that my mind experiences a lot of boredom.
You experience a lot of boredom, okay.
And there's a constant hunger for novelty, something unknown. It always wants to explore something.
Right.
And when that doesn't happen, it leads to sadness. So what's the solution to this boredom?
Okay. Yes, this is the entertainment society we all come from. We have entertainment. I mean, when I was born, we only had 4 channels and no internet. If you think about it now, that's impossible. There was no YouTube, there was no internet. How do we survive? But the thing is, we got so used to having constant entertainment, having our devices, and that's just, we got so used to it, being entertained. Yeah, it's kind of like an addiction. And it's difficult to overcome that. But novelty, when you talk about seeing new things, actually if you look a little closer, everything is constantly changing around us. However, the changes are not obvious enough. So it's a bit of a problem, even from the point of view of the Dharma, because it's very much in opposition to meditation, where you're not requiring external inputs, but it's coming from your own mind. But it doesn't take too long, that's the good news. Now, to do breathing meditation, for instance, honestly, thoughts come up, and if the entertainment becomes your own mind, well, there's a lot of entertainment, because the stuff that's happening in our own mind. The thing is, we're so used to it come from the outside. So take the insight as the YouTube movie or whatever. It's even faster than that, because our thoughts are so fast. So to become like, to just stick with it as much as we can, but don't force it, gently. And of course, if then at some point, can't bear it, then maybe take a break, but don't totally give up. And just go back to your own mind, watching that and being with your own mind. And before long, you'll find, wow, there's a lot to be learned here, right? And you don't have to have like huge periods of time. As I said, take a break in between, but don't let those breaks become super long. Instead, always go back to it. And at some point, yeah, you learn so much about yourself that in itself will probably continue to encourage or continue that drive, basically, that you're more interested. And really, like, watching everything we watch, it doesn't really do to our mind, right? It doesn't really help our mind. In fact, it keeps us away from what's important, doesn't it? Yeah, so it's, in the end, it's a matter of choice, what is beneficial and what's not. And if we understand the benefits of it, I mean, we're still in the very beginning, so maybe this will also be one of the questions that later on won't be an issue. Yeah. But it's hard. This is one of the hardest bits in the very beginning, to just be with our own mind. We're not used to it. This is hard. Yeah. Especially at this day and age when we have so much entertainment at the tip of our finger, basically. Yeah. So just see what is more beneficial. Do you feel better after an hour of being bombarded with sights and sounds and so forth, or being with your own mind? Do you feel calmer? Is it easier to deal with problems? Because let's not forget, the whole point of doing what we're doing is to deal with our problems. Again, it's not in the nature of our mind to suffer, but we do suffer at this point unnecessarily. There's so many wrong views that we're responsible for that. And therefore, is there a way in which we can find more happiness? We can deal with some of our problems. We can deal with some of the day-to-day problems. Now, sometimes in the text, it seems to suggest, don't focus on this life, only focus on the next life. That is not literally what this means. I mean, to also think of the future, that's important, but this life is also important. If we just ignore it, it's not going to work. And to be aware of our problems. Can we find solutions to our problems? Where do they come from? Do they come from the outside, or do they mainly come from within? And I guess the more problems we have, the more motivated we are to do something about it. Yeah. So sometimes it's good to have a lot of problems because that motivates us to look inside. But just give it time. Be gentle with yourself, but at the same time, don't be too lazy. So a certain degree of discipline is important. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then when you feel bored, watch the boredom. Ah, interesting. What does that boredom feel like? And watch that. Use that as your object. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
So I've been practicing meditation and learned about Buddhism for the last 2 years-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still questioning every time if I still live like the Western life, how long or how far can I get, or how close can I get to this real happiness or release from suffering?
Well, the Western life, it's not the problem. The Western life, the way of life, it's not about the external, it's about the internal. But that's hard, to not be swept away by what is considered to be important in the West. It takes a little bit of like a basis, and that takes some time, which you're on the right way because you've left that type of life. You've come into a place like here, which allows you to do the Dharma and nothing but the Dharma. And then, of course, the challenge is how to integrate it into your daily life. But you absolutely can. A lot of great practitioners in Tibet have done that. I mean, there was also ordinary life. There was the life of those merchants, of the I don't know what else, the nomads. They had their tasks, they had their duties on a daily basis. They weren't always sitting and meditating, and still they could bring the Dharma into their life. Now, again, these are questions that need to be addressed, but usually I address them more towards the end of a course. But it's still important, so this should be a question that stays with us the whole time. But the good thing is everything we do is mental here. It's all about mental. I mean, even meditating, if you don't meditate the way we do, it doesn't matter. You can meditate in any position. You can meditate driving a car. You can meditate brushing your teeth. Oh, I'm so sorry. That was more complicated than it was supposed to be. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Oh, I have to wait a little. So therefore, yeah, this is really, the thing is like also what I want to say is in the very beginning, when I first met the Dharma, I had exactly that question. I wanted to bring the Dharma to my life in the West. I wasn't thinking right away of becoming a nun. whoa, I thought monks and nuns were those who can't find husbands and wives. That was my view. I had some really funny views about monks and nuns. In fact, the first Western monk I saw, before I actually learned about Buddhism, he made me angry. He was an Australian monk in Maclaganj. I just arrived in Maclaganj, didn't know a thing about Buddhism. And I saw him and I was like, ugh, that's so embarrassing. Embarrassing. Why does he have to dress like a Tibetan? Why can he not just be himself? I thought that was so stupid to pretend they're a Tibetan. That was I had no idea what they were doing. So it's quite funny, my first encounter. And it's actually a good thing. It's a good thing I had that feeling, because now when I see aggression in other people's eyes, when they see me, they go, ugh. I know exactly how they feel. I felt that way. I mean, some people are like, ugh. They look at me and they go, ugh. You can tell the disgust in their faces because I'm so obvious, not Asian. And I'm like just dressed up. It looks like I'm just being dressed up. So, but anyway, in the beginning, it started off with that. But then when I learned the Dharma, it started making sense. But I remember thinking, can I uphold this in the West? And I couldn't initially. I couldn't. It was really difficult. We have these patterns of behavior. Like we get into that environment, we get back into the old environment and those triggers, and they come back. Initially, that's the good thing. It's only initially. And you become aware of it, and you find means to overcome this. You uphold a practice on a daily basis. You try to keep, and at some point it comes back. So the good thing is you can uphold it, but it requires a lot of mental discipline. But mental discipline is good. It's hard in the beginning, but liberating once you got used to it. And whatever there is, there's nothing that doesn't become easier once we familiarize with it. So therefore, it is possible, but not easy. But anything that is not easy is usually worthwhile. Going to the gym is not easy, right? These weights, they're heavy. Jogging, moving, whatever, is not easy. None of that is easy. Going to school isn't easy, and still it's worthwhile. Yeah. So therefore, you have to have a plan, right? Go through your life. Oh, how can I apply this? When I'm with this person, when I'm with that person. But the good thing is there's so many opportunities to practice. Practicing patience, whoa, a lot of opportunity, right? Yeah, but not easy. But then being a nun is also not easy. So, life is hard. And then we die. Okay. Yeah, so let's see whether that question is slowly answered. But I'm glad to hear what some of your questions are, because in that way I get a sense what's important to address. Anything else? I'm glad you're all very practical. That's good. Don't get caught up too much in the philosophy. Of course, the philosophy is important, and we're getting into some heavy-duty philosophy, but I'm trying as much as I can to bring it to the level when it's practical, what we can do with it, what is practical. And you will not find everything is practical. It's difficult. Some of it is so beyond. And it's important to still introduce it. One thing you will notice about Tibetan Buddhism, it goes right into the difficult topics. But the good thing is that however difficult it is, there's always something we can do with it right now. There's always something, however difficult it gets. We will talk about the amazing compassion there is, the highest level of compassion. We'll talk about emptiness, dependent arising. It's totally beyond our head. But the challenge is then to find things within what we studied that are just as relevant for us right now, that we can bring into our daily life. Now, sometimes people feel that's not very pedagogically skillful to go into these difficult topics, but I found it is. In that it's important to know where all this is heading to, what is the goal basically, so we know we move in the right direction. But since really even the most difficult aspects have parts to it that are relevant to us right now, I don't see any fault in that. But bear with me, you may disagree. Now with questions, most important is that there are no questions left in that what I've talked about. You're welcome to ask any question, but on top of it, if anything I've said so far doesn't make sense, or there's a sense, why do I need to know this? I don't care. Please say so. Okay. Any more? Oh, yes. We've got two more. One in the... we'll go first because you've not asked a question yet, and then...
So, you were talking about this relative happiness, right? So, happiness is absence of suffering.
Okay.
And you gave an example on temperature. So, the person who lives in Russia, when he goes to a 0 degree temperature, he feels warm. The same in somewhere, the person feels 15 degree, he feels warm. But both the person feel the same happiness, right? It won't be a different. Because it's relative to what they felt before.
Okay, I'm not sure I've understood the question. Well, first of all, this is just an analogy, of course, with the heat.
Yeah.
So you're asking if they all feel the same happiness?
Yes.
If they felt the same. Well, the thing is, right now, from our perspective, please come back if I don't answer your question. The analogy, I used it this way to say that what we call happiness right now is not actual happiness. It's a state that someone who's actually removed whatever is not in the nature of their mind, that's a state they would never experience. They would say, that is terrible, that's not happiness. But we can only experience that when our mind is free from whatever causes that dissatisfactory state, right? So only when we can do that. So the person from Russia, now this is just the analogy, right? Like if you're saying, what if someone were to come now into this room and experience the same kind of happiness than an arhat or an enlightened being? Well, then it's easy. There would be an arhat or an enlightened being. So as long as we don't have this degree of happiness, and as long, like I think you could test it by that you would always have the same kind of happiness. It wouldn't change. The analogy that I used with the temperature, it falls short in the sense that these 25 degree, I've never mentioned that they're always the same. So it doesn't go up or down. There's never too hot, it's never too cold. It's always just right. That is the experience that you would have if suffering is gone. There'd be always the same degree. It wouldn't be like you're happier one day and less happy the next. It rains and you feel miserable. No way. The environment around you is not important at all. There's nothing that can get you out of that state of deep satisfaction. Everything is just right. That's the state I'm talking about. I'm not saying that other people are not suffering, but for yourself, you don't suffer. So now your mind is free to help others. You don't need to look after yourself. You don't. Right now we can't look after others because we have to first look after ourselves. We're so busy with our own problems, very difficult to have the space of mind. But if there is no problem, then we can reach out to others. Does that make sense? Yes. Did I answer your question with that?
Yeah. So you're saying there is a state exists which is not happiness, where there is no absence of suffering. Without absence of suffering,
am I saying that cannot be any happiness if there wasn't any suffering? Is that your question?
Yeah. So if there is no suffering, there can't be no happiness, right? No suffering.
Oh, you're saying that can only be, like you're saying similar to if there just can't be hot if there's no cold.
Yeah.
Okay. Generally, you're right. How can we talk about happiness as opposed to happiness? You have the opposite. So in terms of the terminology, to just understand it, yes, it's important to have both. You can't understand heat if you don't understand cold or the absence of heat. But that doesn't mean in order to be happy, do you have to have suffering? No. No. You don't have to have suffering. It's like if you live in the desert, it's not like it's impossible to feel hot unless you felt cold at sometimes. Okay, the desert gets really cold at night. But let's imagine a place where it's always hot, or a place that's always cold. Is that person unable to experience always that cold because they don't have times when they feel hot? No, we wouldn't agree to that, right? But still, just the concepts of heat and cold, to understand them intellectually, we need both. So here, suffering and happiness, or the absence of suffering, yeah, to know what is the absence of suffering, we need to know suffering, just in terms of conceptually understanding it. But that doesn't mean once you're in Arhat, you can't always feel blissful. It's not like, oh, on Tuesdays I need to suffer a little bit, because otherwise the rest of the week I won't be able to. No, it doesn't work like that, right? Yeah, okay, that's important. Yeah, do you need both? No, you don't need both. Just to understand them, right? What is the happiness? Like the absence of suffering, basically. Yeah. Okay. You had yeah, please.
So let's say I dislike a situation and it keeps on repeating. And it's
You dislike a situation and it keeps repeating?
Yeah. So now I'm angry about it.
Yeah.
And the anger keeps growing on each time that situation occurs. But the same, logically, shouldn't the same happen with happiness as well?
Logically, shouldn't it be the same? Oh, so a situation makes you angry and it continues to happen, so you become angry and become angrier and angrier and angrier.
It keeps
so
going.
logically, shouldn't it be with happiness? So for instance, the sounds of the birds make you happy. So as long as, yeah, actually it should be like that. But that's what shows us that it's not in the nature of happiness, the sounds of the birds. Because with unpleasant experiences, they can grow stronger. They do. Oftentimes. So unless we change the situation, or we get used to it, which is a change, which is a type of change. So yes, you're absolutely right. If I were to now take, for instance, I don't know, I start beating you, I start hitting you, the pain will grow stronger, get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. So because it is in the nature of suffering, and so as long as you continue with the suffering, unless there's a change, a mental attitude where I think, oh, I just ignore that and I'm blissful, that's different. But it gets stronger. The opposite is not the case. If someone were to give you a massage, I were to give you a massage now, you know, it's pleasant for a while, but it'll change because it's not in the nature of happiness. This obviously is not in the nature of happiness. It's the suffering of suffering hitting you, and it just gets worse. But even that what we call happiness is not in the nature of happiness, because it should get stronger, and it doesn't. Yeah, if it was in the nature of suffering and happiness, then getting a massage would bring us real happiness. But this is the problem. Why do we need to recognize that? Not that there's a problem getting a massage. Is there a problem getting a massage? Is there a problem eating good food? Not at all. Knock yourself out. I mean, enjoy. But be realistic. This is our problem. Buddhism is not saying don't enjoy. In fact, they say, sure, enjoy. But if we enjoy it for what it is, no, it doesn't last. And don't become attached. That's our problem. Because what our mind does, there's happiness, okay, we feel pleasure. So what does our mind do? It clings to it. It doesn't want to let it go. It wants to experience it again and again and again. So thinking happiness is within this object, right? We want to own it. We don't want to be separate from it. We want to control it. Now, all this is not that serious when it's material objects, because we can control them, we can own them, but of course they break at some point, or at some point they can't give us the satisfaction we seek. But the real problem arises with people, our relationships with others. Attachment, the stronger it gets, and we all have attachment, and we will have attachment until we are pretty high on the path. So let's get used to it. But let's control it. That's the first step. It's not about, you can't get rid of, you can't, unless you're a highly realized being, You won't be able to get rid of attachment, but you can reduce it. We can reduce it. This is very important. People first think, I have to totally reduce, I have to get rid of attachment, I have to stop it right now. Oh, that is very dangerous. You can't stop it. That is like trying to stop something that is right there. It's like you're just going to suppress it. All you can do is reduce it. Just work with it, reducing it, reducing it. Everyone can do that. Because what it is the thing is like with external objects, for instance, people, they make us feel good. So we want to be around them. And then we want to not be separated from them. And not wanting to be separated from them, we want to control them. Because we can only control their presence. I mean, like if we can determine they're here or not, if we can control them, there's a sense I can always have them around us. So it's not about that. They're not giving us happiness, actually. It's not that. They're not the cause of our happiness. The happiness comes from within. They're just the trigger. And there are other triggers. We need to recognize what our mind does. Something really fascinating. Now, let's say you are in the presence of a person and they make you feel really good, right? Where's that feeling good come from? From within. It's that feeling is here. But then we label onto the person, make feel good person. Make feel good person. So we see that making us feel good within them. We believe there's something within them that can magically trigger us feeling good. And the thing is, you need your own mind as well. It's not just the person. It's mainly your mind. Therefore, the person can trigger that, but they're not the only person that can trigger that. Other people can trigger it as well. So we need to recognize it mainly comes from our own mind. And once we do, then we can learn that this happiness arises whether they're there or not. Which then means we're not clinging to them. We're not trying to own them. We don't try to control them. Yeah? We understand basically, right now, they're an object of my mind, and since my mind right now is negatively affected by my fundamental misconception, I can never really enjoy anything, not even that person. So it's just a temporary trigger. And so let's enjoy their presence. But then when they're gone, let go. Yeah? What does it mean, let go? Let go is so important. Because right now, we are slaves. We are slaves to our attachment. We are real slaves. We have no freedom because our attachment keeps us bound. We're such slaves. Right now, we are mainly slaves to a mind that is attached to I and my happiness. There's a mind in our mental continuum that's not always present, but that has an incredible hold over us. It's like a slave owner, right? So there's this mind that constantly tells us, I need, I don't want, I need, I don't want. And we listen to that. We listen to that internal voice. We don't question it. It comes from that particular mind. It's not always there, but when it's there, wow, it's like the slave owner that stands there with a whip and we start running. I need entertainment, I run towards entertainment. I need this kind of food, I run. We're a slave to this particular mind. We don't even get paid. And if we were to do that, like let's say there's an external person telling us, I need coffee, I need entertainment, I need this. And we run around. How long would we do that? For how long? 2 weeks? Without payment, right? Without anything in return, because it doesn't last. The entertainment, you know, you're entertained for a few minutes and then it's gone. So there's no lasting satisfaction, ever. And we still keep running. We're total slaves to that self-centeredness. To that mind that is, I call it self-centeredness, is really just an attachment to I and mine. So we never question it. We never, it's just there, it does its thing, and we're so busy. to find whatever we're looking, whatever this mind is telling us we need. Therefore, that's such a problem. That's such a huge problem. And letting go is about letting go of that attachment. But as I said, we can't really totally let go of attachment, but we can reduce it at least. And the more we reduce it, the more freedom we have, and the more happiness we have. All our problems come from this attachment, this clinging to mind. I mean, think how people are driven, and sometimes for us it's easier to look at the more extreme case. It's hard for us to recognize it within ourselves. Think how some people are driven, especially in European countries, for instance. I mean, of course, in India that exists as well. But but here there's much more spiritualism. It's still there to a certain degree. It's of course disappearing more and more from everyday life, but people are more laid back, trust me. Wow, when I look in Germany, what people do to themselves, they work like crazy hours without stopping. They're never satisfied. They need more money. They need more, like a status. They want to, they can never relax. They have like high blood pressure at the age of 35, 45, because they're so driven by finding reputation, by finding success, by finding... That's not letting go. That allowing your attachment to I and my happiness and my success to totally rule your life, control your life. Right? So that's the problem. That is such a big problem. It's recognizing there's nothing wrong with these objects around us. Enjoy them, but realistically. Okay, now they're gone. It's not very good for my health, that kind of food. So I'm done for now eating, I don't know, whatever it is. Yeah. What is really good for my body and mind? I learned to do that. And it takes time, but we can all do it. Every one of us can do it. It seems impossible now, but we can all do it. It doesn't take that long. I mean, we were not born to naturally want to brush our teeth. Were you born with that since you were 3? I just love to brush my teeth. I remember hating to brush my teeth. I hated it. I went as far as like my parents wouldn't check, and I would just brush the brush on the sink, and they're like, "Are you brushing your teeth?" And they could hear the right? I mean, ridiculous. And now I can't be without it. I mean, I have to brush my teeth in the morning and evening. I would be terrible. So I got used to it. In fact, it makes me so much happier to brush my teeth. You see, I went from like, ugh, I hate it, I don't want to do it, I'm just going to skip it tonight because I'm tired, to no way, I need to brush my teeth. So we got used to that. We got used to it. Okay? But we need to start with ourselves, right? If we also, taking it back to compassion, if we want to do more for others, we need to start here. That's like when you're on the plane. When you're on the plane, what do they usually say? In the unlikely scenario of lots of pressure in the cabin, unlikely, but it could happen. In the unlikely case of, like, what is it called? Like, gas mask will drop from the ceiling. Make sure you put it on yourself first before helping others. Very important. If you don't put it on yourself first, you're going to faint and you can't help anyone. So that's the whole principle of Buddhism. First, we need to work on our own mind. Let's not point at others, right? You know, the world is so aggressive. It's so terrible. I need to change the world. Well, first step is change yourself. If you want to change aggression and anger, start here. Start here. That's the only way. And then you're a good example. Then people can learn from us, right? We become good examples. All right. I'm taking it a little bit too far. What time is it now? 11? 30?
So the bell will ring soon for lunch.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I wanted to do a meditation. I wanted to answer a question and do a meditation. Well, the first thing we do after the break, we start with a meditation. Yeah. So in the beginning, we need a little bit of ground anyway, but hopefully I've addressed some of your questions. The bell hasn't gone. I can say a little bit more. But it will go any minute, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no point in starting a meditation. Yeah, so it just takes, that's one problem. In the 21st century, we have one problem. Everything is faster now. There's fast food, the movies are faster, everything is faster. But one thing hasn't become faster. This process of changing our mind, working with our own mind, still got the same speed they had 2,600 years ago. So we are very used to seeing immediate results, and that just won't happen. So don't look at the result, look at what you're doing right now. So again, don't hope to not be bored at any point in the future. Well, you may still be bored, not talking, just watching your own mind, and the homework is still the same, or the interval work is still the same. Watch your own mind. We'll start off with this. I'll change your homework as we continue, but for now, mindfulness, mindfulness, mindfulness. And so you won't stop being bored, but you can use the boredom to observe the boredom. How does that feel? Usually the boredom disappears. That's the thing, right? Just as anger. When there's anger, you watch the anger disappears. But just make that your object of meditation, right? Oh, boredom, great. Now I can get to know you better. Watch it. And as long as it's there, you can watch it. And then it'll disappear, right? It'll disappear, the boredom will disappear, and then it'll come back, and you just do the same thing again. Yes?
Should I enforce myself not to analyze what I see, like only see it, or if I start analyzing, so just like continue analyzing it?
Don't analyze for now. Just watch. Just observe. No need to analyze. I mean, we're so used to analyzing, but that's also part of the exercise, part of the disciplinary practice, as long as we can. I mean, if you feel like you're really miserable, you need to know, oh my God, now I'm doing too much. I need to just space out and daydream. Well, go ahead for some time. But try as much as you can, not just observe. So this is what's usually called vipassana, just that observation. That's very much part of this tradition. It's not called vipassana in this tradition, but the practice is the same. Just observe, just be mindful, in particular of your own mind. Yeah. Body, of course, you can do as well, but mainly the mind, yes.
In that, with the mindfulness, you had talked about the three aspects.
Yes.
The recollection or the remembrance.
Say again.
So you had mentioned mindfulness having the three aspects.
Three mental functions, yeah.
So that was, if I remember correctly, remembrance, the attention, and introspection, right?
Yes. Maybe we start with introspection,
Introspection.
attention, and remembering.
And that's, can you clarify the difference between introspection and attention?
Introspection is just turning inwards. It's kind of like the focus. So how can I...
Because I don't know, sometimes, and of course, these terms are used in so many different ways in the literature, it's sometimes confusing.
Okay.
And they say alertness sometimes is like the spy part of your mind, watching when your mind wanders away. So is that how you are meaning it? Or?
Introspection is like the spy.
Okay.
Introspection is like the spy that watches your own mind. That's like the spy. Attention is the ability of that spy to continuously spy.
I see.
To continue to spy. That's the attention. And recollection is for the spy to remember to spy.
To bring back to the
To bring back. So when the spy wants to have some pizza, no, I'm joking, but you know, it's like distracted to bring it back. Yeah. So basically, introspection is showing the direction. Attention is the continuity, and mind and remembrance is to the continuity when it's distracted to bring it back. Yeah.
Thank you very
So
much.
they can be used in different ways. Yeah, I agree, they can be. But the way I use this, and it's not about one being right or wrong. It's like, it's just a word in the end, and you may define it differently. But the way I've learned it is like, yeah, introspection shows the direction inwards, the spy. Attentiveness keeps doing it, and recollection is when it's distracted, bringing it back. Yeah. Or you could also say remembrance assists the attentiveness to remain attentive. That's the bell, right? Okay. Anyway, enjoy your lunch. Be very mindful as much as you can. And then we'll meet again at 2 for a meditation. We start with that. All right.